Hey, it's Rick. Welcome to the channel. In this video, I'll show you how I designed and produced this vinyl sticker for my shop. It started as a really crappy sketch in my sketchbook. It's really crude at this point, but I thought there was something worth exploring in the design. I refined its shape a little bit more in Photoshop. I was going to add leaf veins to the design, but scrapped it later on. They'd be way too much work to weed out the vinyl with all this detail. To create a nice, crisp, defined shape, I use the Path tool in Photoshop to give me a shape I can fill with color. Once I've got the maple leaf better defined, I work on the pot leaf. I use the brush and eraser tools to rough in the shape. And then I'll do the same as the maple leaf and use the Path tool to create a nice crisp profile. I prefer to do my playing around in Photoshop. Once I've got a design locked in, I'll bring it into Illustrator and create the final piece. To get this into the Vinyl Cutter software as cutting paths, it needs to be a DXF file, which I'll export from Illustrator. Once I have the shapes defined, I can flatten the file and save it. I import the file into a locked background layer in Illustrator so that I can work over it without disturbing it. I use the pen tool to create one continuous outline. I've got the tool set to no infill and a very small stroke, I think 1/4 of a point, just enough so I can see what I'm doing. I'll refine the shapes as I go, correcting any mistakes I made earlier. Once I have the shape defined, I give it a red fill. I'm thinking the design still needs something more, so I experiment with some central veins on the pot leaf. While it looks better, it does make the decal more time-consuming to weed when it's done, so keep that in mind when designing decals. I delete all the layers I don't need, and after selecting all the elements with the selection tool, I use the Pathfinder tool to combine them all into one. What I'm doing here is defining the cutting paths. Once that's done, I go to File, Export, Export As, and select the AutoCAD DXF option. This is the best format for exporting to the Silhouette Studio Vinyl Cutter software. If you're using something different, you'll have to confirm with your manufacturer what format works best. Once I'm in Silhouette Studio, I import the file using Merge from the menu. It's important to note that once you import the file, it may not be as one group. That is, each piece of line work might be separate, which will make it complicated to scale and duplicate. I recommend selecting the whole thing by dragging a box around it and then going to Object, Group from the menu. Now it's all one piece. If you lock the little icon at the top, it constrains the proportions. Then you can simply enter the size you want. In this case, I'm making it 5 inches tall. By using Ctrl-C and Ctrl-V, you can copy and paste them to get as many as you want. I scaled this so that 5 would fit on this piece of vinyl. Once you've got the layout the way you want, you can send it to the cutter. Your cutter needs to be connected to the computer and turned on for this setting to become visible. At least that's the way it is with the Silhouette. I have a custom setting for Oracal 651 vinyl. Your settings may differ depending on how old and dull your blade is. When the file's ready to go, I load the mat with red vinyl. I like to use the edge of a table to help with the curling. Otherwise, it's pretty frustrating to get this on. I feed it into the cutter and hit the load button. This footage is greatly sped up. It took about 16 minutes to cut the 5 leaves. You can speed up the cut, but sometimes that can cause it to screw up. Designs that have a lot of small angle cuts can take a lot longer than something simple. Once it's done cutting, the best way to remove it is to pull the mat from the vinyl, not the other way around. Now I cut each individual decal out from the sheet. I find it easier to stick the individual decals back down to the mat, so I'm not fighting the curl of the vinyl while I try to weed the design. Weeding is the act of removing the parts you don't want. I put a little cut in the vinyl with an X-Acto knife to separate the outside edge, as it's harder to do if it's one piece. Then I pull it all the way around. This process will be different for each design. Some will be easier than others. The finicky bit is the inside leaf. Those little veins I added to the design towards the end turned out to make the weeding kind of tedious. But they do make the design look better, so for now I'll keep them. Once the whole thing's been weeded, I apply the transfer tape. This is a low-tack tape with a grid pattern. This is what you use to pick up the individual pieces as one to transfer them to your surface. If you're going to sell these, you would ship this with the transfer tape already in place, and the customer would apply it to their object. Once it's on, rub it down really well to make sure it adheres to the vinyl and picks up all the pieces. Here I'm going to stick it on a laptop. The first step is to clean the surface well to make sure there's no dust or grease that the decal won't stick to. I'm using Windex for this. Figure out where you want the decal to sit, then apply a piece of tape just on the transfer tape, not the wax backing sheet. This will make sure the sticker stays aligned. Now carefully lift the transfer tape and decal away from the backing sheet and discard that backer. Carefully apply the decal with smooth, even force from the tape down, making sure you're not trapping bubbles. You can use a credit card or a squeegee for this as well. Then rub it down well to the surface. Remove the piece of tape and pull the transfer tape away at a steep angle, close to the surface. If you pull out and away, it may take the decal with it. You want the decal to stick to the laptop, not the transfer tape. And that's it. If you're going to make decals like this to sell, you should probably create an instruction sheet to include so your customer knows how to do this. This kind of vinyl has an outdoor life expectancy of around 5 to 7 years, so it's pretty durable. Anyway, I hope you got something out of this. Don't forget to hit all the buttons on your way out, and thanks for watching.